We begin the news in West Africa, where residents of Minna, the Niger state capital in Nigeria's north central, are protesting the high cost of living in the country, blocking major roads within the metropolis. The protesters said the rising cost of food items and poor government efforts to arresting the situation forced them to block major roads so that governments will hear their cry. The deputy governor of Niger State, James Garba, while addressing the protesters, said that the government is aware of the pain and hardship families are facing at this time. And now to security matters. In northwest Nigeria, officials say at least 35 women are missing after kidnappers seized guests returning from a wedding in Katsina State. Police spokesman Abubakar Aliyu said suspected armed bandits ambushed and kidnapped about 35 women returning from the wedding in the Sabuwa area. However, the state's Internal Security Commissioner, Nasir Muaz, gave a higher figure, saying more than 50 people were seized on the way back to Damari village after escorting the bride to the groom's house. Muaz said officials visited the village and were told that 53 people were taken. And away from that, we'll tell you that the Labour Party candidate Daniel Asama has been declared winner of the House of Representatives rerun election for Jos North, Bassa local government area, Federal Constituency in Plateau State. Declaring the results this morning, the returning officer, Professor James Garba, said Daniel Asama, after the elections was concluded, was declared the winner. According to him, Asama scored 66,422 votes to defeat his closest rival of the PRP, who got 61,670 votes. The All Progressives Congress candidate came third with just 10,063 votes. ADC polled 2,090 votes, APP 331 votes, NNPP polled 2,475 votes, RM 669 votes, and SDP 336 votes. News Central's Chinzoba Anyawe reports that Daniel Asama now takes the seat of Daniel Aga of the People's Democratic Party, whose election was nullified by the appeal court for not complying with the electoral guidelines.
This is 2024 Jos North Bassa Federal Constituency Rerun election. I, Professor James Garba of the University of Jos, hereby certify that I am the returning officer of the 2024 Jos North Bassa Federal Constituency Rerun election held on the 3rd day of February 2024. The election was contested by 8 political parties. Hassan Ibrahim Baba, male of APC, got 10063, 10,063 votes. Daniel Asama Ago, male of the Labour Party, got 66422, 66422, 66,422 votes. That Daniel Asama Ago of the Labour Party, having satisfied the requirement of the law, is hereby declared winner and is returned elected. Signed by Professor James Garba.
But I'll tell you that majority of Nigerian cities have had electricity restored after experiencing total blackout on Sunday due to the national grid collapse. Power generation fell to 0 megawatts, causing widespread blackouts in major cities, including the capital, Abuja. Various electricity distribution companies across the country sent messages apologizing to customers regarding the incident. In a statement, Nigeria's transmission company announced that the national grid has been restored after repairs were carried out. This was the first grid collapse this year. It collapsed several times last year. The National Youth Service Corps says the scheme has stopped posting corps members to states deemed unsafe as a result of the worsening security conditions in Nigeria. The Minister of Youth, Jamila Ibrahim, disclosed this in an interview. However, Ibrahim said the scheme has taken steps to secure NYSC members, including posting them only to safe states. As an immediate intervention of government and the NYSC as an agency, corps members posting to unsafe states has been stopped. According to her, the security of corps members require collaboration with other government agencies. She said the federal government is working on reforming this scheme to reflect the present realities of the nation, particularly in the area of allowance. The Alumni Association of Igbobi College, one of Nigeria's oldest secondary schools, called for improvement in both morals and educational standards across the country. They emphasized this message at the 92nd Founders Day anniversary celebration and Merit Award presentation honoring deserving individuals. News Central's Niyomoni has more.
Once boys and students of the prestigious Igbobi College, the boys and our grown men who have established themselves as respected individuals and leaders. They serve as captains of industries and top principals across Nigeria, upholding a legacy of excellence and achievement worth emulating. As Igbobi College celebrates its 92nd anniversary with a luncheon and merit awards ceremony, the Old Boys Association believes these better illustrates the transitions and accomplishments of the school's esteemed alumni over the decades.
I think today is a great day for ICOBA. So 92 years that the school has existed, Igbobi College. And of course, we take the opportunity to honor our best who have established themselves in different walks of life.
Beyond the festivities, the Old Boys, as they are fondly called, believe there is much to learn from the school's principle and educational model. According to them, if adopted more widely, such practices could help further improve the quality of education across Nigeria.
If you don't have a good quality teaching community, you cannot produce the best students. And this is what we try to encompass in showing that that is the way forward, because it actually works because we see the results.
You can't give what you don't have. And we have a situation where the people in charge of education do not even know the standards they should aspire to, So we have to find a way of going back to the basics. Imitation is the highest form of flattery. They should just imitate us. We're doing a lot. Do what we're doing, and we will all develop together. As it is now, we are even advising some schools, on what to do.
For the award recipient, the recognition serves as a call to greater service and impact.
In my life, I had close to over 80 to 90, close to 100 awards, both locally and internationally. I would tell you with all sense of humility that this is the best, the highest, however, because the best recognition comes from those that know you.
Anybody who passed out of either a secondary school or a university, and whatever we have become today is because of what that school put in us. So it is time for everybody who passed out of a school to give back to that school what they put in your life to become whatever you are today.
Having produced many eminent Nigerians, the faith-based school advocates support for initiatives that can strengthen moral character and learning across the country. In Lagos for News Central, Ni Omani.
We now go back to the 2024 Rerun election in Nigeria, where we told you that the Labour Party candidate Daniel Asama was declared winner of the House of Representatives Rerun election for Jos North Bassa Federal Constituency in Plateau State, and we'll also be considering how the election played out in the country on Saturday, looking at the 26 states where these elections were held. To discuss this, we're joined by Emmanuel Njoku, is with Connected Development. Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So from where you see it, what would you say were the key factors that contributed to the outcome of the rerun and by-elections held on Saturday in Nigeria?
Well, I would say that INEC, they are learning their lessons and they are stepping up their game as regards logistics and deployment, but there is still a missing link. And there are two factors that I will point to that is still the reason why we have the kind of elections we have. Like you noticed, INEC had to cancel an election in 3 different places. Mind you, this election that held in 2023 went through the process, courts asked for a rerun. Now INEC came back there and yet the election couldn't hold. And one thing I blame as factors for these issues are 2. One is the role of the security agencies in our elections. And then the second thing is what I call consequence management. So if you look at the 3 places where INEC suspended elections right now, 2 out of those places, the one in Kunchi constituency in Kano, and then the election at Ikono in the federal constituency in Akwa Ibom State. These issues are issues of insecurity. We understand that ballot papers and election materials were, disruption and invasion by literally thugs. And these are places that we already saw in the last election that they had security challenges in these places. One would expect with proper mapping that there would have been enough deployment to check these issues so it doesn't repeat itself. Yet it happened again. So the question is it that our security agencies did not anticipate this level of violence that will affect this election to happen? Then in Enugu State, where the election has been suspended, the issue there is the issue of results not being available at the polling unit. And then you blame all of these things to consequence management. You recall that in the Kogi State election, that we observed issues and challenges of pre-fill of EC80, that's the polling unit results, being pre-filled before election started. Now, these issues were observed and they were reported and they were escalated. Till now, I am not aware that any prosecution is going on because this has to do with some rogue INEC staff who have decided to be in bed with some politicians to steal the polling unit results to be able to manipulate the process. Now, when I talk about consequence management, if the people that were arrested or if somebody has taken responsibility and is facing the consequences of doing that in the Kogi State election, we will not see a repeat of that in this Enugu State election. So going forward, INEC is not enough to say that we've identified that results were stolen or were not available at the point when elections were started. But what happens to the person's risk? Someone needs to take responsibility. And we need to see such people prosecuted and jailed. So Njoku can learn from this things. Not go into elections with this kind of attitude. So,
of course, we know that these by-election and rerun elections seen as a prototype to the off-cycle elections that will be coming around this year, later this year. So does it mean that when we talk about the provision of security, voter turnout, that's voter apathy, adherence to the rule of law, and ensuring that elections are free and fair, Nigerians should not expect the electoral umpire, that is INEC, to live up to his billing again? Is that what you mean?
Well, so take it one by one. Let me try to unbundle it. When you talk about voter apathy, the way we run our elections and the deployment and the use of the permanent voters card, sadly, has been one reason why a lot of Nigerians do not vote or were not able to vote in the 2023 general.
Hello, Emmanuel.
Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, we can hear you now. Please go ahead.
Yes, so you remember talking about voter apathy. I was trying to say that if we continue to do the same thing the way we are doing it, a lot of Nigerians will still not be able to vote. And I'm talking about deployment of the permanent voters card, the one that must be issued, the rubber card that must be issued by INEC. If we continue to run elections in that same way, a lot of people will not be able to vote, and which is why we're advocating that going forward, because we do not use card readers that usually have this handshake with the PVCs, now what we'll just do is basic identification at the polling units. Now, we're advocating that going forward, people should be able to print their PVCs, paper voters card. So even when you lose it or when it gets defaced or anything, you should be able to still print it. That way you'll be able to vote. Okay. I've said this thing before. The bigger problem most times from lessons learned is not necessarily INEC. INEC, they have their shortcomings and their challenges. But the problem we should start focusing on are the political actors and the political parties and
Hello, Emmanuel.
And their talks, they used to always want to get balance. We know INEC does not have any business with the security of election. The duty of INEC is to deploy and be at polling units at 8:30 a.m. on every election day. So if we want to have credible and peaceful election, all of that burden and responsibility sits with the security agencies. And this is why we continue to advocate that they should do proper mapping in deeper collaboration with INEC so that they will be able to do right deployment, appropriate deployment of security agencies in places where there are history of violence. Let me say this. In that federal constituency in Akwa Ibom, Ikono-Ini federal constituency, at the 2023 general election, the 33 polling units where INEC have come back to do election now, elections couldn't hold there in 2023, 33 polling units because of violence. INEC scheduled a supplementary election for those same 33 polling units. Elections still couldn't hold there because of violence. So I'm even bothered that INEC eventually is coming back months after to do election there, and yet violence still didn't election hold in many polling units in that place. In this situation, you will not hold INEC responsible or civil society responsible. It is this police, security personnel who are supposed to understand the challenges of elections in that place, and we are supposed to adequately deploy to ensure that talks will not have their way like they had in 2023. And it's sad that this is just election in just about 5% of polling units across Nigeria, yet the security deployment was not enough to stop turbulation and disruption of the process. How much more when we go to election in 2027 general election? It's a concern. I think security agencies should pick up to their responsibilities.
Well, of course, it's something we'll continue to probe, even as we hope that election cycles will be held free and fair. Thank you so much, Daniel Asama, for talking to us.
Thank you for having me.
Many thanks for being there. We're still in West Africa to tell you that the Senegal's parliament on Monday began debating a proposal to postpone the presidential poll, which was previously set for February 25. According to the text distributed at the meeting, deputies began examining a text adopted the previous day by a preparatory committee proposing a delay of 6 months or even up to a year until February 2025. Supporters of Karim Wade, whose bid to run in the presidential race was rejected by the Constitutional Council, presented the proposal. It said the aim of the postponement would be to avoid institutional instability and serious political unrest and to ensure a complete resumption of the electoral process. The text is supported by the parliamentary camp of President Macky Sall. Staying in Senegal, we understand the government has temporarily cut mobile internet access a day after hundreds protested President Macky Sall's postponement of the presidential election. Communication Minister Musa Boukatiam said it was done to halt the spread of hateful, subversive messages relayed on social networks in context of threats of disturbances to public order. The move comes a day after Senegalese took a private television channel off air, accusing it of inciting violence in its coverage of the protests. Amnesty International Senegal chapter has condemned the government's actions and urged it respect freedom of the press and the rights of the citizens to be informed. Also, we tell you that Senegal's opposition deputy, Guy Marius Sagna, said former Prime Minister Aminata Touré, now a leading opposition figure, has been arrested in Dakar at a protest against the postponement of the presidential election. Touré was appointed Prime Minister by President Macky Sall before joining the opposition. This comes after the announced postponement of the February 25 presidential election. To discuss this, we are joined in the studio by Eb Dapogat, an African International Affairs Analyst. Is currently General Secretary of the West African Civil Society Forum, WACSOF, Abuja, Nigeria. Thank you so much for coming to our studios.
Good afternoon, and thanks for having me.
So, Senegalese President Macky Sall cited disputes in terms of the candidate list for the election that is to be held on February 25. And an opposition party has also tendered the need for the election to be postponed. So why is it that some other opposition parties and a section of the citizens in Senegal feel that what the president has done is undemocratic?
Thank you very much. You know, I mean, there is not enough reason to say political instability or civil unrest will cause the president to postpone the elections, because in the first place, the process was moving smoothly. I think part of what has caused unrest in the process has been basically because of the attempted stifling of the opposition in this country. So this postponement is uncalled for. It is against the principles of the ECOWAS, particularly enshrined in the ECOWAS Supplementary Protocol on Democracy and Good Governance 2001. And particularly, this postponement, you know, puts Senegalese on edge. As we know, in 2012, President Macky Sall came into power riding on the back of a huge protest by citizens of Senegal against President Wade's attempt to implant his son as the next president. So this development is actually very, very worrying, especially on the heels of similar, you know, developments and other anti-democratic trends showing their head across the region. Of course, just to draw attention to it, we've seen how Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso have existed the ECOWAS. We've seen also last year in December when the president of Guinea-Bissau dissolved the parliament arbitrarily and against the constitutional provisions of that country. So we're seeing this as another kind of anti-democratic trend that is rearing its head. And so, this is not good for the country.
So now that we see that temporary cut of mobile internet access prevails in the country, don't you think that will further exacerbate the misunderstanding that persists in the country among the citizens, the government, and the opposition parties?
Well, I think to a very large extent, of course, they have done that in their own right to curb civil unrest, because of course, we know the protest spirit of the Senegalese. You know, as I just mentioned, in 2012, they were able to stop the decision of a president to try to impose his son as his successor. So, for me, I think, yes, if they had not done that, perhaps by now we would have had massive protests in Dakar and other parts of Senegal. However, the question is about the legitimacy or the correctness of this decision, especially hours just before the campaign took off. You know, it shows perhaps maybe the president is trying to see how he can have his way to install one of his party. But these
are just speculations. There is no evidence to back it up that the government is trying to play fast one on the political opponents in the country. There's no claim. There's no evidence.
But you know, there has been no. Perhaps what he should have done was, first of all, to find a way of having this proposal passed in Parliament in the first place, because you cannot give medicine after death. you have already cancelled the election, you have already announced a postponement, and then you are going back to file, a request for the postponement. How logical does that sound?
Well, he said that he wants to ensure there's a free, transparent, and inclusive election in the country. And he said that he wants to ensure that every party candidate is respected and represented in the ballots, in the electoral materials that will be made available during the polls. But then, how do you expect the international community to respond to this? First, let's talk about the AU, the African Union, and ECOWAS. I know that ECOWAS has responded in a way asking the Senegalese president to do what it can to ensure that peace is restored to the country and elections are held. So what do you think should be the disposition, the response for these unions and, of course, other international communities who have interest in this to ensure that there is no rancor in the country?
Well, I think the responses have already come in, most of them. I think the US, France, the European Union, the African Union, the ECOWAS have given their responses. And I think most of them have called to the need for a new election date to be set as fast as possible, But the question or the major issue is now with this disruption, how will things go? Remember that, again, the election was supposed to hold about 3 weeks from now, and the campaigns were supposed to take off, just a few hours, in fact, before the announcement. So definitely people have to ask questions, and the opposition parties have said, well, to hell with this, we're going ahead to do our campaigns, whether he likes it or not. So it is a challenge asking him to fix the election timetable quickly. But as we have heard from the proposal that have been sent, it seems as if they want to postpone it for at least 6 months or even up to a year. How reasonable does that sound? What really are the actions that need to happen that cannot happen within a month and 2 months?
So do you think that would have a negative repercussion on the economic landscape in the country? And some are even saying that it probably might affect the political space in the country too.
Well, I wouldn't say would the economic aspect, perhaps the political climate within the country, yes, will be affected. In fact, we've had a lot of talks about a possible, maybe this could give rise to some military coup in Senegal. We've had speculations, flying wildly like that, given that these are the same kinds of developments that have happened in different countries that have resulted in military coups. So, this is a dangerous ground to tread on. We would like to ask the Senegalese government to be a bit cautious and a bit sensitive to the interests of the citizens and the aspirations of their citizens.
Thank you so much, Debukat, for joining us on the news at this time. We really appreciate your presence.
Thank you.
Let's now tell you that Eswatini Foreign Minister Pulile Shakantu and her delegation have successfully completed their visit to Taiwan on Sunday. Shakantu met with President Tsai Ing-wen and Vice President Lai Ching-te during this time. According to a Foreign Ministry press release on Monday, Shakantu signed a joint declaration with Foreign Minister Joseph Wu. The document highlights and reaffirms the rock-solid Taiwan-Eswatini relationship and promises to strengthen future cooperation between the two countries. Foreign Ministry Department of West Asian and African Affairs Director General Anthony Ho said that Taiwan will continue to deepen its relationship with Eswatini, promoting the exchange in multiple fields based on past solid foundations. In East Africa, the number of people who died in a huge gas explosion in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, on Thursday has risen to 6. 2 more people succumbed to their injuries on Sunday, while receiving treatment at the Kenyatta National Hospital, the country's largest referral hospital. 52 others are being treated in different health facilities. A lorry laden with gas cylinders blew up just before midnight in a densely populated area of the city, causing several fires. The authorities have described the filling facility as illegal and said it had previously been demolished twice. Still in East Africa, local authorities say 19 people, one of them a humanitarian worker, were killed in ethnic clashes over the weekend in the Abia region, straddling the border between Sudan and South Sudan, and claimed by both. Violence is coming in the oil-rich territory, with 54 people killed last week alone, including 2 UN peacekeepers. Last week, another 64 people were injured in fighting between 2 tribes of the main ethnic Dinka, the Abia-based Ngok, and their Twig rivals from the neighboring state of Warrap in South Sudan. The Abia Administrative Authority said the attacks on civilians culminated in the loss of life, setting the market ablaze, property looting, and raiding of livestock. The World Food Programme is calling for immediate, unimpeded, and safe access to conflict-hit areas of Sudan to provide food to millions of displaced people facing acute hunger amid warnings that the war, which seems forgotten, has potential implications for regional stability. Speaking in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, Kingsley urged the international community to wake up to the threat posed by the escalating conflict in Sudan. The WFP says more than 9 months of conflict has exacted an unimaginable toll on civilians. It calls the situation beyond dire, noting that almost 18 million people are facing acute hunger. A bit of health now. Report says at least 1 out of every 4 individuals is susceptible to cancer, while the recovery rate is over 60% when detected early. Experts say early diagnosis is key, and about 67% have survived 5 or more years after diagnosis. Just about 18% have survived 20 or more years after diagnosis. 64% of survivors are aged 65 or older, and this comes as the World Health Organization's Regional Director for Africa, Dr. Machiditso Moeti, expressed deep concern over the devastating impact of cancer in Africa. Speaking on World Cancer Day, she revealed that in 2022, cancer claimed the lives of over 500,000 Africans. Dr. Moeti highlighted the prevalence of breast, cervical, prostate, colorectal, and liver cancers, attributing 50% of new cases to these types. Men are likely to develop prostate, lung, and colorectal cancer, while females suffer from breast, cervical, and thyroid cancer. The 66th Annual Grammys Awards took place in Los Angeles last night, where the great and the good of the music industry gathered to be recognized for their achievements in music over the past year. So, who were the night's biggest winners and losers? For the Central international correspondent, Arthur Hagen has been taking a look at it.
Women were firmly in the spotlight at this year's Grammy Awards, with nominees like Miley Cyrus, Billie Eilish and SZA all taking home multiple prizes, while the Best New Artist award went to R&B star Victoria Monet, the first time a female R&B act has scooped that award since Alicia Keys in 2002. Taylor Swift took home her 4th Album of the Year trophy, securing her position as one of the greatest songwriters of her era. Tyla won the first ever Grammy Award for the Best African Music Performance, the brand new category that recognised the Song of the Year. "I never thought I'd say I won a Grammy at 22 years old, the South African singer said. Although coming up against stiff competition, including massive Afrobeat stars Burna Boy and Davido, Tyla's hit song Water proved undeniable for Grammy voters. The Grammys has always been focused on American music styles, but over the UK-based PR and marketing consultant and Recording Academy member Gracie May co-authored the proposal to have the Grammys add this category. She says it's about time.
Following quite a few other awards creating a Best African or Best Afrobeats awards, I and 9 other people drafted a proposal, and the Grammys is very specific because it's a community-based organisation. For any new categories that are created, a proposal has to be submitted, it's reviewed by trustees, it's screened, it's voted for, and then if it passes, then it's created. And actually before the one that we submitted last year, there was one that was submitted the year before and one submitted a few years ago. And at that time, the Academy didn't think that it was the right time to create it. So given the fact that we've been in the world/global category since the beginning of time, it was a really great moment to see the Academy see the great work that's been done by our African and Afrobeats artists, to the point where they believed that it was the right time to give us our own recognition and our own award. And fingers crossed, this is the beginning of more to come.
And the inaugural Best African Music Performance for City Boys. The Nigerian singer earned his first Grammy in 2021, winning the Best Global Music Album Award for his album Twice as Tall. Although he lost out this time, Gracie May predicts he will come back stronger.
For Burna, he's done this. You know, it's not his first rodeo. He's won some, he's lost some, and he's going to come back next year stronger. And who knows? I mean, he did something amazing this year where he was the first African artist to be nominated in the Best Melodic Rap category. That's never happened. And he lost to, a very worthy competitor.
For failing to give the Best Album prize to his wife Beyonce yet again. I don't want to embarrass this young lady, but she has more Grammys than everyone and never won Album of the Year, said Jay-Z. So even by your own metrics, that doesn't work. Think about that. Famously, Beyonce has more Grammys than anyone in history, with 32 in total. But for all that apparent love, the big prizes have eluded her. Of the 16 times she's been nominated in the major categories, she's won just once. Song of the Year for Single Ladies in 2010. Afia Hagan, News Central.
And still joining us to give more insights is our international correspondent, Afia Hagan. Now, Afia, it seemed a great night for women in music at the Grammy Awards. What do you make of that?
It definitely was a great night for women in music. Like we said there, we had Taylor Swift, who picked up Best Album for the 4th time. She's won an incredible amount of Grammys. We saw Beyonce there at the end, who has not been honoured, perhaps in the way that she should be. She's always missed out on that Best Album prize. But we did see great, amazing, iconic women performing as well. We had Tracy Chapman, who was on stage. That was because of the resurgence of her track Fast Car. So she was playing that on stage with country music star Luke Combs, and he had a huge hit with that track at the end of last year. So they were performing that. Joni Mitchell, who suffered a brain aneurysm in 2022 and had to have some incredible amount of rehab to release an album in 2022. Also, she was back performing as well. And like I said, Victoria Monet, SZA, all these incredible women picking up prizes this year, and massively well-deserved, where in the past, the Grammys, along with other awards around the world, have been very male-dominated.
So you would also reckon that it was a big night for African music too last night with the inaugural award for Best African Music Performance. However, there were disappointments. Kindly take us through the issues with this year's event.
And yes, unfortunately, there can only be one winner in each category, which means there will be those disappointments. And yes, it was a big night for African music because of that inaugural award for Best African Music Performance. We had Davido nominated for 3 awards. He was nominated for Best Music Global Performance. He was nominated for Best Global Music Album, and that Best African Music Performance lost out on all 3. You had Burna Boy nominated for those 4 huge awards as well, along with Olamide, Aristar and Ashake. They were all nominated, but they all didn't take home the prizes. Who did? Of course, it was Tyler, the 22-year-old South African amapiano star who picked it up for that huge hit Water. Now, a lot of people saying that perhaps, is she getting the award because she's popular with the record labels? But what we have to remember about the Grammys, like Gracie May so rightly said, they are an American-centered organization. So what hit in the US? And even though Davido and Burna Boy certainly been doing the rounds and certainly had huge hits worldwide, it was Water by Tyler that really managed to cut through on this occasion.
Afia Hagen, thank you so much for giving us the updates. And that's all at this hour. But before we go, we take another look at some of our top stories. Niger State residents protest high living costs in Minna. Senegal Parliament begins debate on proposed election postponement as authorities temporarily shut down internet after protests. 19 killed in region claimed by Sudan, South Sudan. Do send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number and email on your screen. You can follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can also watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times, channel 274, Avo TV and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Lekan Onabanjo.